last week or last Thursday on the 200th episode of Pigskin Frenzy, we went over 50 through 41. 50 through 41. And now we are at the 40 through 31 portion of our continued list of Frenzy's top 50 games of the 2024 college football season. Episode 201 of Pigskin Frenzy here. Live, living color on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Guys, it is going to be an electrifying list. We're inching closer and closer to the number one, our ranking, our Pigskin Frenzy number one game of the 2024 college football season. We can't wait for it. March 6th can't come soon enough, but we are ready to rock and roll with 40 through 31 here on this glorious Tuesday afternoon. Welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris, and whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, listening on Podbean or Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. Now, after watching it on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, all you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. Instagram at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow out the pages there. You're going to get episode updates. You're going to get news and highlights from across college and NFL football. You're going to get trivia questions on Instagram stories, go and answer today's college football question as well as all things of today for Pigskin Frenzy. I messed up on that intro. I said NFL, didn't I? Well, I'm just so it's a tough transition. We're just getting used to just doing college football only here on Pigskin Frenzy, but websites, www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Store and affiliations pages are coming soon. There's also the platforms page. All the platforms I just mentioned, go and click on what's your favorite listening style of the show. There's a Home and About Me page. Learn more about me as your podcast host. There's a contact info down below. Name, email, and question. I will answer it off air or on air if need be. All that and more coming up to date with the website for Pigskin Frenzy. That's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Let's continue with our list because it was a great episode for 200 episodes of Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, a big shout out and big thank you for everybody that tuned in to the 200th episode of Pigskin Frenzy. Like I said, though, beyond and onward, right? Onward and onward. We're going to go to 300, 400, 500. We're going to hit them. We're going to hit those milestones, and we're going to keep on pushing and plugging in to Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, it is electrifying. 201 as we get into the 200s now. But let's kick it off with the Frenzy top 50 games of the 2024 college football season, 40 through 31. We went over a lot of monumental games. If you already saw the 50 through 41 episode on episode 200, if you didn't have a chance to listen to it right now on episode 200 of Pigskin Frenzy this past Thursday. It's Tuesday now, but listen to it before you listen to this episode. But also, check out the list also on X and Instagram at Pigskin_Frenzy on both Instagram and X. Both handles are those. And check out 50 through 41 of Frenzy's top 50 games of the 2024 college football season. We're going to have them posted and ready to rock and roll on Wednesday and Fridays after the day after the episodes drop. Let's talk about 40 through 31 because we have a lot of games that we're going to cover. Memorable game from 50 through 41, if you want a cliff note, it's Vandy Va Tech. We had Missouri and Auburn in there. We had Texas A&M and USC in the Las Vegas Bowl in those. We had the national championship in there. We had a lot of games in there that were memorable. But as we get high, go all the way down to one, we're going to go to the better games and the better games of, in our opinion, the better games and our thoughts on the better games as we go and continue as we get closer and closer to number one of the 2024 season. Let's kick it off with number 40, though. 40 is Texas versus Texas A&M. And you're going to think, dude, would you really consider that a top 50 game? I would, because of the magnitude of the game. And I'm gonna put it at 40 because I thought it was better than a lot of others, but I thought based off of the hype and magnitude of it. Now, if you want to say the game itself was entertaining, as in a lot of people thought, okay, well, man, we all thought that Texas was all over them. And the thing is, as I adjust my mic here, yeah, they were on them. And it was one of those games when you look at it, you're thinking to yourself, this game wasn't really highly entertaining at first, but then kind of got entertaining at the end. But it was slow to start, and it was. But the hype around it was great. It was one conference foe, who are one conference team that was undefeated in the SEC. if they would have lost to this team, they would have gotten in. It was winner goes to play Georgia in the SEC championship the week after this one, after this game, the next week. They were going to go play Georgia, winner Texas A&M or excuse me, Texas A&M or, Texas, right? But if you want to talk about, because Texas A&M had one conference loss, I believe, and Texas was undefeated. Winner goes to play Georgia in Atlanta, and college football playoff hopes were on the line for A&M, Texas, and it was just a bunch of implications in this ball game. The hype around it was big, and not only that, it was the first game they played since 2011. The Lone Star Showdown, the first game they played since 2011. Now that Texas is a part of the SEC, and A&M, they were a part of the Big 12 back in the day. So it was the first Lone Star Showdown in years, and the hype around it was big, and it could have gotten none better, right? So that's why it's number 40 on my list. Now the game itself was a little bit slow. I thought that Texas dominated pretty much the majority of the game. I'm going to be real. I thought up front A&M was not equipped up front to handle Texas. And you're going to sit there and think, they sure are. I think this year and beyond, I could agree with that. I think last year they just weren't ready. They weren't on the level of a Texas or a Georgia in that regard. I just don't believe it. I really don't. I thought that Quinn Ewers had a better game than in this one. I thought that Wisner played really, really good on the ground, and he ran the ball well against this team, and I think he was the main predominant factor for this offense to get this offense ticking for the Longhorns. And then the A&M defense made some good plays, but not enough to stop the running game with Wisner, and Texas just kind of drowned them. I think they took them into deep waters. They drowned them. They were out physicaling them, and that's how they won the ball game in Kyle Field. They didn't even let the noise get to them. That Kyle Field in College Station was packed. The 12th man was coming into effect, and it did not bother Sark and the Longhorns one bit. Now, I will say this. Marcel Reed made some good plays, but he also has to develop on some plays, and this game kind of showed it. I didn't think he was ready for a game of this magnitude, and I think that it really did show. I thought that they made some good plays on defense with that pick six, that electrifying pick six, and brought them up. I thought the play calling a little bit for Mike Elko, not kicking a field goal later in the game to put them up 17-10, because they had a shot at getting the ball back to make it, a tie game instead of, going for it on 4th and goal. They went for it and they didn't get it. They ended up stopping Texas, and it was 17-7. And I was like, I don't know what, it's a little too late. They should have gone for the field goal and make it 17-10, then stop them, then attempt to go back and tie the game with a touchdown. So I didn't know what was going through the play calling and decision making there. I thought that's what cost A&M, but nonetheless, the hype was there. Everything was there. Texas won the game 17-7, and Texas went on to the SEC championship, which we will get to and foreshadow that here in a next episode or two. So get ready for that as well. Texas versus Texas A&M was number 40 on our list. Let's go to number 39, and we're going to go through this, pretty quick. We'll have a 30 to 40 minute episode. 39 on our games for top 50 frenzy games of the 2024 college football season is Texas Tech versus Iowa State. Number 39, Texas Tech versus Iowa State. That game was electrifying, man. It came down to the very end, back and forth, score fest. Rocco Becht was doing everything he can to win the ball game, along with the Texas Tech Red Raiders offense and Joey McGuire. I thought that game was sensational. I'm pulling up the notes of it now. Texas Tech going in to Ames, Iowa to play Iowa State, electrifying. Iowa State was undefeated in conference play, but undefeated overall in college football in that regard. And it was just a fun game. November 2nd. Ben Morton, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, 21 for 40. Taj Brooks, 122 yards, a touchdown. Brooks was running the ball quite well. And then you had Josh Kelly going for 2 touchdowns, 127 yards, 8 receptions for receiving for the Red Raiders. And then you had Iowa State going with Rocco Becht. Rocco Becht, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 for 38. He He handed it off to Sama the third, 74 yards, 13 carries. Hansen had 46 yards, 11 carries. There was a back and forth game. They ended up losing their first one to Texas Tech in a close one. They went on the road, blocked out the noise, and got the win. It was back and forth, physical, and a lot of playmaking ability from both teams. This did not affect Iowa State, though, however, because they ended up going to the Big 12 championship anyway. But Texas Tech is proven right now under Joey McGuire that they are a dangerous team, especially with what they're doing. And we talked about it last Tuesday, what they were doing in the transfer portal and what they are doing in recruiting, and they are building their team up for the Big 12 coming up in this season in 2025. So I'm curious to see what the Red Raiders do in college football coming up in 2025, this coming up fall. But in this game, it was back and forth. Playmaking ability was on point. Morton was a big part of the game, driving down the field late, running the clock, making some big playmaking ability. They could not stop those receivers, especially Josh Kelly, and they just went into the field. Taj Brooks went into the field, touchdown, got the win late, 23-22, and then got a big-time stop late. Interesting game. Texas Tech, Iowa State, 23-22 was a monumental showing for both teams, and it kind of drove the future for Texas Tech a little bit, like I said, based off of just heading into this season, kind of gaining some momentum. They ended up going to a bowl game, right? So it ended up working out. But listen, Texas Tech can be on the rise. Iowa State will most likely kind of be in it next year. I expect it to be Iowa State, BYU, and Arizona State to be the forefront. But Texas Tech is somebody that you cannot not sleep on. Do not sleep on Texas Tech and Joey McGuire going into the 2025 year. 23-22 was the final score of this ball game, and it is 39 on our list. Let's go to number 38, and 38 was a doozy. Pitt versus West Virginia is 38 on our list. The final score of this game was 38-34. Pitt defeated West Virginia. Pitt was down by 10 points entering the fourth quarter, and they ended up storming back and winning an intense backyard brawl game. It was highly entertaining, and Eli Holston ended up leading them to a big comeback. Thank you, Pat Narduzzi, for getting a big-time win here with Pitt. Pitt was a solid football team in the first half of the 2024 season. The wheels kind of fell off, but they were an interesting football team in 2024 nonetheless with Pitt. Pitt, it was, if you want to look at the scorecard here, 10-7 was the end of the first quarter. Pitt was leading. West Virginia had, it was 17-17 at half, tied ball game, 7-7 in the third quarter to end it, and then ended up being down, Pitt, scoring up 10 at the start of the fourth quarter. West Virginia was up on them, and then Pitt ended up storming back late, scoring 14, make it 38-34 to win the ball game. It was an interesting game. 3-0 is when they started out, and West Virginia started out 1-2. So this was presumably, that not at the time, no one knew it yet, but this was Neil Brown's last season as West Virginia head coach. Rich Rod is back for his second stint there, but Pitt had a good first half, and then the wheels kind of fell off, like I said. And we'll probably get into another Pitt game. Start probably next week. No, I'm not probably. I would say next week. I'd say coming up Thursday there will be a Pitt game on our list. It was pretty interesting that we're going to talk about. But if we're going to talk about going into this game, Pitt was they were ranked 3-0 or white hot. I mean, look, Eli Holston, 3 touchdowns, 301 yards, 21 for 30, the Alabama transfer going into this one. He also had 59 yards and 14 carries on the ground. Davis Jr. had a touchdown, 3 yards, 2 carries, 26 yards, 11 carries for Reed. And then West Virginia, they battled back hard, and it was a hard-fought game, and nobody would let up, right? So I thought this was a very interesting game and a very interesting backyard brawl. Garrett Green, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 16 for 30. C.J. Donaldson Jr., 79 yards, a touchdown. White had 46 yards, 13 carries, and a touchdown. It was a back-and-forth game, to say the least, and it was a highly intense game. Ended up being in Pat Narduzzi's favor. I am curious to see what both teams do going into 2025, especially West Virginia, now that Rich Rod is back as the head coach in Morgantown. So I'm kind of interested to see what goes down there for West Virginia. But as well as Pat Narduzzi, they had a good start of the first half, especially with this win right here, and the wheels kind of fell off. So I want to see how Pat Narduzzi is going to operate in 2025. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say about it. Number 38 was Pitt versus West Virginia, where Pitt defeated West Virginia 38-34. That is 38 on our Frenzy Top 50 games of the 2024 college football season. Keep on plugging into Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, big thank you for tuning in and listening. About to be at 4,600 listeners total. Big shout out and thank you. Keep plugging along on all platforms, including X and Instagram. And we're going to post this list, 40 through 31, out tomorrow on Friday. And then out tomorrow, Wednesday. We already posted the one Friday. We'll post the other one on Friday as well. But out tomorrow on Wednesday, we will post this list, and we will get everything out 40 to 31 through this list. All right. Enough of the promotion. Let's talk about these games. Number 37 on our list is USC versus Minnesota. Does it make sense that Minnesota and USC were playing each other? Usually it doesn't, but now that USC's in its first season in the Big Ten, or was in its first season in the Big Ten, of course it's going to make sense. It was a highly impactful game. USC was a heavy favorite in this ball game, and Minnesota stuns them 24-17, and PJ Fleck got a signature win there out in Gopher Land, right, in Minnesota. PJ Fleck wearing a suit, hyped up, pumped, beats Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln Riley and his team were left in shambles. A lot of fans were angry. No, we're better than this. We're USC. We should be beating Minnesota. Yes, I would say yes and no. I would say yes because of the program and how it usually is, but at the same time, and how much you're paying Lincoln Riley, but at the same time, I thought Minnesota was a very good opponent and a very good team this year that a lot of people didn't really, a lot of people slept on. They were in the Mayo, excuse me. They won the Mayo Bowl. The Mayo Bowl, against Va Tech at the end of the year. Minnesota didn't have a bad season, I don't think. So a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's Minnesota. Don't sleep on PJ Fleck, man. PJ Fleck knows how to recruit, and he's doing quite well for it to be a quote-unquote Minnesota. So I'm just saying, PJ Fleck knows what he's doing. He knows ball, all right? So 24-17 was the final score. They came back and beat them, and they just didn't have an answer. Miller Moss and company at USC. Miller Moss at the time was the starting quarterback. Now he's with Louisville. They didn't know what was going down, right? So it was madness. Late in the game, ended up coming back. Minnesota ended up winning the game. Late turnover, got the win, and Minnesota defeated USC. It was momentum. Storm Fields rushing. PJ Fleck pumped. No one expected USC to lose this game. Quite the big upset, and I think that's why this game's on my list, because it was a monumental game to look back on and remember that, hey, Minnesota beat USC this year. That was pretty intense. So 24-17 was the final score, and USC versus Minnesota is number 37 out on our list. Number 36, as we're going through these, number 36, Maryland versus USC. Another USC game, and Maryland defeated USC 29-28. Lincoln Riley and USC. This is one of those games where it was like, okay, Minnesota, we understand. But Lincoln Riley and USC against Maryland, what the heck happened? You had the lead. And you blew it in the fourth quarter. You had the lead and you blew it in the fourth quarter. Or late in the third, really, but early in the fourth, just blew the game, and Maryland came back and got a late stop, late turnover. 29-28 was the final score, and upset USC. Another monumental USC defeat. And USC had some tough breaks this year. And everyone was saying, yes, they were better than their record advertised. Remember, USC beat LSU week 1 of the game, which we're going to get into that later in the game as well. We had a lot of games that we can put on this list, and we're going to put some on here probably on Thursday that I'm mentioning, but just to foreshadow it, right? But Maryland and USC was an interesting one, only because you're thinking, okay, this is the team that beat LSU, who LSU around this time was starting to figure it out, right? A little bit more. But then the wheels fell off of LSU too. So it was a crazy season. But if you want to look at it, this team beat LSU in Las Vegas in week 1. They turn around and start losing to Minnesota and start losing to Maryland. It was just, you sit and you're thinking, you're like, mind-blowing, right? Why would Lincoln Riley lose those ball games? But he did. And he lost in a 1-point fashion. Huge upset for Maryland. Mike Locksley didn't have the best season at Maryland, and he's kind of kind of on the hot seat going into this year. But I'm going to tell you this. Maryland in this ball game did well, and that's beat USC going to the Big Ten in its first year. And USC had high expectations going into the Big Ten because on paper, you would think with their roster and their coach and that they're better than a lot of these rosters. Well, Maryland and Minnesota and a lot of other schools showed them really quick that, hey, we are better right now, and you got a little bit of a ways to go to adjust to the Big Ten. So, and this game showed it. A point madness at the tail end. USC blew a lead, and it created for a fun and magical game. That's why this game is number 36 on our list. 29-28, Maryland defeated USC. Number 36, Maryland versus USC is on our list. Number 35, Arizona State versus Kansas is 35 on our list, and a game that had 5 lead changes alone in the fourth quarter. About 5 or 6 lead changes in the fourth quarter. Kansas and Arizona State were just trading back and forth. The eventual Big 12 champions, Arizona State, got the win over Kansas. Kansas was another team that was better than what their record showed. They ended up missing a bowl game, going 5-7. But I'm going to tell you this: if they would have had some of these games, they would have gone bowling. And if they would have had some of these other games, they probably could have done a lot better than just go bowling. Jalen Daniels with injuries and a lot of injuries to Lance Leipold's team was a big thing, and I think that's what caused a lot of the tough, close losses. But this game was highly entertaining because it was an offensive score fest. I mean, lead changes alone. Both offenses just going down the field, driving down the field. Cam Scattaboo playing like a madman. Daniels playing like a madman. And it was just Big 12 football. This was a game right here that showed why Big 12 football is still highly entertaining. And Big 12 football is entertaining. A lot of people think that it's not, but it was probably the closest conference all year. It went to the very end to decide who was the Big 12, who was going to go to the Big 12 championship. All right, and then late Sunday morning, early Sunday morning, Arizona State finally clinched the Big 12 championship spot to go to Dallas against Iowa State. Right, or I think it was vice versa, but it was close. It was super close. And the Big 12 and games like this is when the Big 12 was competitive, and Kansas and Arizona State, along with Kenny Dillingham, showed. Kenny Dillingham was Coach of the Year, not just in the Big 12, but in overall, because Kenny Dillingham did a lot, man. He did a lot to bring Arizona State to the promised land in his second season. He brought them to a quarterfinal, Peach Bowl, and almost went to a semifinal. We're going to get to that game. We're foreshadowing that game as well. Probably the best college football playoff game out of this playoffs this past season, and it was just electrifying what Arizona State did this year, and congratulations to them on a heck of a season. But Kansas was, doing really, really good, right? And in this game, they went back and forth and traded shots, and in the end, Arizona State won the ball game. So number 35 was Arizona State versus Kansas, where Arizona State defeated Kansas 35-31 in this game. Number 34, and we're getting close to the end, guys. Keep plugging along on Pigskin Frenzy, guys. Just keep plugging along. Keep chugging along. Comment down below. I want you to know your thoughts on this. Again, we're going to have this list 40 through 31 on X tomorrow, Wednesday, which is Wednesday tomorrow, 40 through 31 on X and Instagram on both socials. 34, Missouri versus Iowa in the Music City Bowl, where Missouri defeated Iowa 27-24. The Music City Bowl, our first bowl game on this section of the list, 40 through 31. Missouri was trailing in that game. Iowa was playing some strong defense and actually scoring, and they ended up catching a big lead. Late heroics by Brady Cook, and beat up Brady Cook, and Missouri ended up storming back late to win the ball game. Eli Drinkwitz wins another bowl game, and it goes and wins 27-24. Missouri defeated Iowa in the Music City Bowl in Nashville. It wasn't a good Big Ten versus SEC, or good matchups against the Big Ten versus the SEC, or for the SEC. The SEC was in need of some wins against the Big Ten and the SEC. I mean, they had losses like Alabama, getting beat by Michigan, Texas, getting beat by Ohio State, right? You had South Carolina and Illinois, and you had It's a lot of games, right? A lot of losses on these. Texas A&M getting beat by USC in the Las Vegas Bowl. A lot of losses for the SEC against the Big Ten, but this was one that the SEC needed and they got. Iowa did lose this game, and Brady Cook, with his late heroics, is the reason why this game's on number 34 on my list, and he was highly entertaining. Defense did some good, it's always going to be good for Iowa. Iowa's got stingy defenses every year. They played their heart out, and it was back and forth at the very end, but Missouri ended up showing some more heart to come back and win this game. So that's why it's 34 on my list, man. I just think that it's a game where you look at it and you think where it may not be a strong game on paper between two formidable opponents, but it was a decent enough game where it had some late heroics, some of that spark and some magic in the air for Missouri to stage a comeback. So I think this is 34 on my list. Missouri versus Iowa, Music City Bowl, where Missouri defeated Iowa 27-24. So that was 34 on our list. 33 on our list is very interesting, and you're going to think, are you going to put that game there? This game was sloppy. It was sloppy, but it was controversial, and that's why the game is so good. I'm going to tell you really quick before I get to number 33 what I base my list of games off of. Controversy, magic, late heroic comebacks, back and forth shootout affairs, stingy games, the magnitude of the game, the environment. Those are the type of things I base my rankings on. How they won, how it went down, the feeling that we get as football spectators, experts, media, and fans. That's how I base this list on, and how good and how special the games were, right? And how well they drew. I think that is why I put them in the places that I put them. 33, LSU versus South Carolina. Why did you put that on there, Joel Norris? I'm going to tell you why. Was it sloppy from both teams? Heck yes, it was. Did it come without controversy? No, it did not. It was very controversial on both ends. South Carolina had a lot of penalties in that game. LSU had penalties, missed calls on both sides, and it was insane. Let's just look. Let's just talk about it. Let's get on our our notes off our mobile device and go forward. LSU was needing to win. They were 1-1. It was a trap game going into Columbia, South Carolina. South Carolina was playing some good ball, and I said that South Carolina is a team that could sneak up on LSU and beat them. You got to play them close. Raheem Sanders and Lenore Sellers aren't no joke. And starting off hot in the game, South Carolina went out, to a 7-0 lead. They ended up making it 17 points in the second quarter. LSU had to score 16 in the second quarter as well. LSU ended up doing great in the third quarter and in the fourth to find a way to win the game. LSU kicked a late field goal. It was 33-33. LSU kicked a late field goal. Damian Ramos did to win the game and to ice it and to it was a late touchdown. It was a late touchdown. A late touchdown by Josh Williams to get the win. And, Alex Herrera, not Damian Ramos, didn't kick a game-winning field goal. I misspoken that. The last play I saw was Damian Ramos kicking the PAT. What happened was Alex Herrera tried to kick a game-winning field goal, and he missed it, and that's how LSU won the game. It was a late miss by Alex Herrera from South Carolina, and South Carolina lost a very close game. But Lenore, Sellers, and Sanders were all over this defense. His defense a little bit was in shambles early, but then they kind of picked it up late in the game. Blake Baker is a tremendous defensive coordinator, and I think he'll have a lot of the defense fixed heading into 2025, especially with the talent they are putting on this defense as well, especially at the linebacker core and secondary. But when you look at the running ability of this South Carolina team, Sellers and Sanders were all over this LSU team, and they were all over this defense. LSU was getting South Carolina this game in a lot of ways. Especially in penalties. 9 penalties for 75 yards for LSU. They were giving him this game, but South Carolina just kept giving it back to him with penalties. 13 yards, 123 yards worth of penalties. That's a lot of penalties. Some of them were good calls. Some of them were horrible calls. A lot of the arrests came involved in this game, officiating game, and it was a horrible officiated game for both sides. Missed calls on both sides, and they should have been called. LSU should have been flagged for stuff. South Carolina should have been flagged for stuff. South Carolina shouldn't have been flagged for a lot. LSU should have been flagged for, like, just a horrible officiating game. It was controversial. It was exciting, and it was a back and forth until the very end, with LSU getting a much needed win in SEC play, heading into a very important showdown within the next couple of weeks against Ole Miss, because they needed that win heading into the big crucial game with Ole Miss heading into October. So, I mean, it was controversial on both ends. South Carolina ended up doing a little bit better than LSU in the season. They ended up winning, going 9-3 in the season. So they beat Clemson in the South Carolina Bowl, right? They ended up beating Clemson, and we're gonna get into that game. We're gonna talk about that game, foreshadowing that one, in a strong game for South Carolina. And then LSU ended up going good. They ended up going to Texas A&M, which we're going to talk about that one in a little bit, because that was controversial for LSU's part. And the wheels fell off after that game. They lost to 3 straight. A&M, Bama, LSU lost 3 straight. So I'm sorry, LSU, Florida. Excuse me, I'm just going off a tangent. And they lost to Florida, so it was rough. But then in this game, 36-33 was the final score. LSU defeated South Carolina. It was controversial, very high impacted. 33, LSU versus South Carolina, where LSU defeated South Carolina 36-33. Okay, 32-31, the last 2 games before we conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. Missouri versus South Carolina is 32 on our list, because that game went down to the freaking wire. It was highly entertaining, went down to the wire, it was close, and we were on the edge of our seats. South Carolina defeated Missouri 34-30. Let me just set the scene for you here in Columbia, South Carolina, because we need to talk about it. I think this game was entertaining, when especially with like a lot of heroics in this game as well. Let me go to the summary here and the notes here. Like in the game, it was like a minute 10 left. It was 27-22, and then all of a sudden, a 37-yard pass from Brady Cook to Luther Burden and a minute 10 left in the game. Touchdown, Missouri. And you're thinking Missouri's going to beat South Carolina. They went for the 2-point conversion. Jamal Roberts, 2-point run, got it in, 30-27. It's a 3-point contest. It's a 3-point contest. You're like, what are we doing? South Carolina gets the ball back. How are they going to match this? Because Missouri, they're just trading away at this point. That fourth quarter alone was interesting. If you want to look at the fourth quarter, it was 15-21 with 12 minutes in the game starting out. South Carolina, Missouri got the ball back, scored, made it 22-21, and then touchdown for South Carolina, make it 27-22, 30-27, and then South Carolina late finds a way to get it done. 15 seconds left in the game, 15-yard pass down. They went down the field, 15-yard pass from Lenora Sellers to Raheem Rocket Sanders for a touchdown. Alex Hara kicks it to make it 34-30. Missouri doesn't come back, and Missouri loses close in a last-second game to South Carolina for a bunch of heroics. It was 3 or 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter alone in the very last seconds in this game. Well, I'm sorry. If you want to talk about the final 5 minutes, it was 3 lead changes in this game. 3 lead changes in the past 5 minutes in the fourth quarter of that game. 3 lead changes. It was back and forth, last-second heroics, and South Carolina gets the win. It was highly energetic. Both offenses were just shooting from the hip. Eli was saying, if you want to shoot, let's shoot, cowboy. And he told Shane Beamer that. And Beamer said, you know what? I'll take you down on that offer. I got a team that I believe in. And Lenora Sellers ended up doing it. This is why Lenora Sellers is being hyped up for the 2025 season, because of stuff like this and because of games like this. And he did really, really well in this ball game, and South Carolina did really well in this ball game as well. 34-30 was the final score of this game. 34-30. South Carolina defeated Missouri, and this was 32 on our list. 32 was Missouri versus South Carolina because of the high-octane emotion from both teams and this game in general. Last but not least, 31, because Thursday it's 30 through 21. Thursday. So before we get to Thursdays and conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy, 31 on our list is Tennessee versus Arkansas. A huge game for both because they were coming off of a bye. Tennessee was. Arkansas was going to go to a bye after this game. Coming off of a bye, Arkansas played a game before that. Tennessee was coming off of a rest, but they had to go to Fayetteville in Razorback Stadium in Woo Pigland. Everybody was pumped. Sam Pittman was pumped. Josh Heupel and Nico Amaliava I thought were pumped, but Arkansas just brought a better and physical matchup, didn't they? Final score of this game, Tennessee got upset. Arkansas defeated Tennessee 19-14, but this wasn't the only upset that happened on October 5th, that weekend. Oh, no. And this wasn't the best upset because that day was filled with monumental, game-changing upsets, and we're going to talk about it. And history-making upsets as well. And and you probably already know what I'm talking about. I'm foreshadowing it a little bit, dropping hints on it. Can't wait to reveal where that game's at, but we're going to talk about it later. Later, not now, but later. But this game was still a big upset. Tennessee was number 4 in the nation. Arkansas was unranked. Arkansas was bringing a lot of physicality in this game. Malachi Singleton, the freshman, who's now transferred out from Arkansas, was bringing some high-octane pressure through the running game and through the air. And Arkansas was playing tough up front to upset this team. Nico Amaliava it was 19-14. Nico Amaliava had a few seconds to go down the field to score. He got some big chunk plays in, and they went closer to the red zone. They were like around the 30-yard line. So they had a little bit of less of time to do it, and some stops by the defense for Arkansas gave them less and less time. Nico was trying to run for it, and the clock ran out. Tennessee did not have enough time. The play calling wasn't in sync late, and Arkansas got the win, 19-14, heading into a bye to face LSU that previous bye, so that previous week, or the next 2 weeks or whatever. They were on bye on the 12th. But Tennessee got beat 19-14. Back and forth physical contest between both teams. It was a game where Tennessee, yes, they were scoring points, but their defense was good. But Arkansas was bringing a lot to their defense late in the game and pushing that defensive line around up front. Arkansas had some beef up front in the O-line. They were a very underrated offensive line in the SEC, and it showed right in this game that they were bringing a fight, right? A fight to them up front. So it was quite the underdog-type matchup for Sam Pittman. This kind of catapulted Sam Pittman into relieving some temperature off of the hot seat, because it seems like every year that we talk about Sam Pittman in Arkansas, Sam Pittman is on the hot seat. I don't know why, especially for Arkansas, for the Arkansas sake, but I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. But it was a tight game. Big moment. They rushed the field. They did get fined for it, but it was a huge upset to end a hectic October 5th game on Saturday night. Arkansas defeated Tennessee 19-14 following a late stop to ice the game. Tennessee versus Arkansas was 31 on our list. That was 40 through 31. Let me guys know what you guys think in the comments below on X and Instagram when I post the list tomorrow on Wednesday. On X and Instagram, 40 through 31 is this right here. What you guys think? If you disagree or agree with my rankings and my game rankings, let me know in the comments below on YouTube, on all platforms, including X and Instagram when I post them tomorrow. That was 40 through 31. Guys, we are out of time. A big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage and some Frenzy Top Game coverage presented by me. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, all you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram, at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow out the pages there. You're going to get news and highlights from across college, football, and the NFL on X for highlights. But news and highlights from across college football, you're going to get Instagram stories, trivia questions on Instagram stories. Go and answer today's college question. There's reels. There's a lot of posts on there. Go and follow on there, including everything up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, the website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Go and check that out and keep plugging in to Pigskin Frenzy on all platforms as well. Guys, big thank you for tuning in to 40 through 31 of Frenzy's top 50 games of the 2024 college football season. And we will be back Thursday for episode 202. Not only that, but Frenzy's top 50 games continuation. Our list continues, and we're talking about 30 through 21, so do not miss it. Frenzy's top games, top 50 games of the 2024 college football season, 30 through 21, as we inch closer to next Thursday's March 6th reveal of number one. The number one game of Frenzy's number one game of the 2024 college football season. So until Thursday's unveiling of 30 through 21, until Thursday, I'm Joel Norris signing off. We will see you then. For everybody out there, we're praying for you all. We love you all. We couldn't do this show without the Lord Jesus. And if you want to come to know Jesus, talk to me. Do not be afraid to message me. I will gladly talk about the Lord Jesus. He has given us everything, and we praise be to him for giving us this platform to do this show on and to spread his name and exalt him above our own, because it's not me who's blessing us with this. It's Jesus who's blessing us to do this show each and every week. So we're praying for you all. We love you all. As always, stay the course.